Distinguished experts, dear friends and colleagues, I am very sorry and disappointed that I cannot be with you today to take part in these discussions with so many experts in the field of human rights. FRAME is an impressive project, and I congratulate the institutions, as well of course as the scholars, who made possible the important publications, the conferences and the events, many of which I had the honour of attending. FRAME testifies to the EU's commitment to human rights, since the project would not have been possible without the funding of the European Union. But that is not to say that the EU is always and everywhere a champion of human rights. In this year's Fundamental Rights Report, we at the agency look back over our 10 years of existence and what that decade has meant for human rights protection in the EU. And while the Union's human rights story does tell the development of an impressive architecture for the protection of rights, we also see persistent difficulties in mainstreaming those rights across all policy areas. Going forward, Europe faces major challenges in the years to come. Let me name just three. First, continued migratory pressures will stress the need for a comprehensive long-term EU migration policy, and this will need to balance the legitimate regulation of migration flows with the legal and, quite frankly, the moral obligation of honouring the asylum needs of those in need of international protection. Second, legislation and policies to counter security threats will impose additional limitations on fundamental rights, and these must respect such principles as legality, necessity and proportionality. Third, the unacceptable levels of inequality and the related incidence of poverty across our societies must be tackled. Now, these three challenges would be more than enough alone. However, we also have to realise that the overall context for the protection of human rights is changing in a negative manner. Above all, we see that the human rights framework itself is increasingly being called into question. This makes well-considered and powerful communication on human rights one of our greatest and most important challenges in Europe. We've got to do a much better job of demonstrating that human rights are about and for all people. Now, against this background, the contributions of the academic human rights community are more needed than ever. And the Fundamental Rights Agency is also conscious that we must all work together to ensure respect also for your human rights. Researchers and their institutions are a big part of civil society, and they are no less under threat, as we are witnessing today, regarding at least one major university institution in the European Union. Colleagues, in this climate, the FRAME findings could hardly be more relevant, and the Fundamental Rights Agency looks forward to seeing their impact for a strengthened protection of human rights within our European Union. I wish you an interesting and a fruitful conference.